All right, so here we start on day 2 of the build. So I let this set overnight because I wanted to make sure this was nice and strong, because I mean, if you look at it, it's, I mean, there's some pretty thin wood that we've got to work with there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to be doing is, I haven't decided if I'm attaching these to here, because one side is definitely higher than the other side. And then once I get those two sides done, and I get them at the height that they're going to be, because one's going to be at this height. Let's see. Okay, let's try to do this so that you guys can see what I'm trying to do. One's going to be here. The other one's going to be here, okay, with two different heights, and then the roof will slant to the lower side, which is the outside. So now I just need to figure out how I'm going to put those together. And then we've got roof things to do. We actually have to paint those first. I might take those outside today and paint them, because it's a nice sort of day out to get some of those done. And I also have to figure out if those are the right heights. So let's see how we can put these together. There's two ways I could do this. One, stick this over here. Let's just try that one first. We're going to try those first. I'll lay these out. And then we're going to go ahead and this up, glue them on, and see how we do it. Okay, so let's put this in the middle. It's nice, it holds it right there. That'll be good without even having to put these down yet. So we'll go ahead, figure out where the posts are going to go. Glue those first posts in. And then once we get the first posts in, then we'll do the other wall and then the other side. Okay, so I decided to speed up the film a little bit because I didn't think you guys needed to see how I glued wood pieces together. So basically all I'm doing is I'm taking each wall section and I'm gluing them down to their pedestals. And these are just direct glued right on. There was a lot of thought. I didn't know which way I wanted to do it. There's different ways that you could have done this. I could have to turn the walls over, drilled in some panels. Drilled in some posts, and then drilled the posts into the other way, and then I could have just put the posts on and stuck them in that way. But then I had to worry about how was I going to get the roof correct and all, which in the long run, it really wouldn't have mattered. So this is kind of, this is kind of some Monday morning quarterbacking that we're seeing now. It probably would have been easier for me to drill out, put a little pin in the bottom of each one of these, and then put these posts where they're supposed to be on the uh, diorama, and then went ahead because the roof really didn't matter whether I made it slanted or not, because it didn't matter on the location of the roof. It just mattered that the roof was built in a certain way. So, and I had to come up and change the way that I was going to do the roof and the way that I was going to do the building because of all the detail work that I had to do inside the building. So you can see here, much like a few other people, I think I need at least one more set of 1, 2, 3 squares. They really are good because they are so heavy and solid that they do a good job of holding things up straight. And as you can see here, using them as a little bit of a jig so that I could hold these up and have them stand straight up and down. Now, the funny thing is yeah, you can look at the posts and they're not quite straight all the way, but that's okay because they're concrete and things move around. So now we're going to get on to the next part of the build while these are all drying. All right, so while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to go ahead and start making some of the cross beams. This is going to be fairly simple because, again, they made it fairly easy. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these pieces in, but once I put them in, I'm going to leave them there to dry. We're just going to approximate these because they're just spacers. I'm going to leave them in there to dry, and then once they're dry, I'll go back through and cut them. Okay? Now this was probably done with like 2x6s or something like that when they were cutting these originally, but I'm just going to use the extra pieces that I have for there. And these are just spacers so that these things space out right and gives me a beam. Because what I may do is build the roof on the ground and then lower it onto this. It might be easier doing it that way. Okay. So all I have to do is make sure that my pieces are square on both ends. As soon as I find my square, which has, there it is, decided to kind of go away. All right. So I just come up, make sure they're square this way and this way. Make those like that. And so long as I leave enough room on the edges, come on, these have just got to stand straight up. And they're having a little problem standing up. Don't know why. Okay, one set. And we'll do this 3 more times. And then like I said, then I'll come by, cut those off flush, because it'll be easier for me to cut them off flush then. And again, I'm just approximating where the center is, because there is no cross beam that goes across the top. It is just spacers that went on these. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. All right, so all I'm doing here is building up my cross members. Like I said, what I'm doing is I'm taking 2 of the 2x12s by 12s, and then I'm taking parts of what was left of the posts that I had and just putting 3 of them in there, because if you look at the picture, that's the way it looks, that there's just 3 little sections on there. And then these go on either side of the posts that go up to make the roof. So total of these had to be made was 6. And then once I got them all done and they dried nice and tight, because I didn't want them to move or anything like that, I cut off the excess flat on all of these joists. So that's how I kind of basically did all of the roofs. Okay, so there is a pattern to the way that some of this stuff goes on. And so I have to kind of watch the way that I put the stuff on, because there's some pieces missing, some pieces that have holes in them. But what I'm doing is I'm taking the big one first, and I already know that I only have one set that goes, and then my next set is 3 more. So what I'm doing is, and actually that's a full set all the way down. So, oops, put it on the wrong one. Okay, have that one full opening. And don't ask me why. I mean, I know why some of the openings are there, but I needed to do this way because that's the way it would have been done to put the whole building up, and then they would take stuff off. Which, if you guys can see these pictures, which you will, you can see that's exactly what they did. They came up, they had a perfectly good building, and then they needed to change it for their specific purposes. Okay? I don't know if the building was ever perfectly good, but there was a building. Think of this as a really big garage port. Or a carport, rather. That's really kind of what we're doing. So this has got plywood, move that over just a little bit. All right, so what I'm doing here is putting on the 4x8 sheets of plywood. Now, what I had to do is while I was putting on the plywood, there were openings, there were breaks and all that kind of stuff. And the way that I kind of did this was I wanted them flush on the top, and then come across the walls. So you can see that there's 3 in each section between each one of the posts. So there's a total of 6 of these 4x8s that have to go on there. So I wanted to make sure that I got them done the correct way each time. So I only did one section at a time, which is what you guys are seeing. I did speed this up to 2 times. I wish I would have done this as time lapse, because this took quite a long time. I think I just showed you guys the one side. So basically what I did was there's certain parts that I had to leave out, other parts that didn't have to get left out. There was just no reason to have to put the things down there and then try to cut them out. The one big hole that's in this wall is actually where the auger goes to. So that's why, and then I come back later and I have to cut more stuff out. But the big thing is I'm putting these on 2x4s, so there's not a whole lot of gluing space on any of these. So once I get them done, once I get the walls finished the way that I want them, and most of the way that it's supposed to be done, I turn them over, put them on their flat side, and then put a weight on them to make sure that the glue sticks, and then they get to dry for a while. Okay, so once we get all the plywood done, I've got these last couple to do. I think I didn't put the holes in them yet, but still putting the glue on the 2x4s. You can see that I'm using a little T-pin to put it on, because this 2x4s, there's not a lot of room on them. So I got this. What's really cool is it does stand up under its own weight. This is where I kind of realized, I think these need to be weighted down a little bit. So, as you can see, it's standing. It doesn't have a problem. And I decided that there was no sense recording the other wall build because it was going to be the same. So At this point in time, I just kind of cut the filming and said, okay, I'm going to go do the second wall by itself. We're going to put that away off to the side, and we're going to go ahead and put some weights on it. So, all right, so this is just a quick little setup on how these are going to go in. So you see they fit in between each one of those. However, there are some of these that are pretty thin up at the top. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes on this side. Yeah, so this is the fun part. We'll have to figure out how this is going to go. I think what I'm going to do is lay these down flat. Yeah, see, but if I lay those down flat, I have to somehow put those up. So one of these has got to be flat. And then the roof is actually going to be slanted between the two heights. So, I think we're going to do some trial and error here and see what happens. All right, so basically both walls are done. Both walls have got all other things done. And now I'm trying to figure out how am I going to do the roof. So this is one of the parts about scratch building. I'm sure Vinny showed you too when he was doing his other thing that it's like, how do I make these things work? Exactly how is this going to happen? So one of the things about these cross members is the 2x6 posts, and the posts that I used inside of these cross members weren't always all correct, which meant that I had to spend some time sanding things. I also needed to make sure that the walls would stand up. So again, it's kind of a little tight and a little loose that we have to do here. Basically, the walls did fit. They clipped in exactly the way that they were supposed to on either end. And I found out that I did have some excess board that needed to come off, so I decided to take the board off now. Again, these things sat for a while to make sure that they got glued down really nice and tight. And then there was some excess up on the top. I wanted to trim some of those off to make sure that that all came about. Now, the funny thing is I found out after I had done all this. This is one thing where you got to keep referencing the building, even though you've seen it and you thought that you knew what you were doing. These were actually supposed to go through the beams, through the posts themselves. So I've got a 12-foot wide opening, and it's actually supposed to be 10 because those should have stepped out on either side of the building by a foot on either side. That probably would have made the build that much harder, but at the same time I actually would have had to make longer posts. So at this point in time it's like, that's too late. I'm not starting over, because I would have had to have made every one of the posts a little bit taller just so that I could get through. So this is me kind of coming up and figuring out how I'm going to do it. You can see that I've got all the panels up. This is the wall that is closest to the road. The other wall is closest to the rail tracks. You can see that there's differences between them. And this is where I came up and I said, well, you know what? I want to make sure that these things are nice and tight for the rest of the night. So this is where I'm going to end this video of me coming up and putting lots of weight on the panels so that they all fit right. So everybody, thank you for watching my part 3 of this build, and we will continue on with the series, and we'll start building a roof in the next one, it looks like. Okay, everybody, thanks for watching. Subscribe, post, give a like, and I will see you on part 4.